Brothers and sisters, over the past several months, our union has made it a priority to be fully committed in all facets of this year's election process, with particular focus on the race for mayor. A boss who can decide when we get our next raises, a boss who can allocate more FTEs to the department and build more firehouses, a boss who can fund initiatives to keep our members healthy and safe, and a boss who will pick the next fire chief of our department. Throughout this process, we asked tough questions of every candidate, reviewed their records, examined voting histories, and evaluated their vision for the district government. We carefully considered the type of leadership our union needs and what is best for our members in order for them to successfully carry out our mission to the residents and visitors of Washington, D.C. The past 2 years have been especially challenging. We have mourned the line of duty deaths of 3 members, experienced the tragic mid-air collision over the Potomac, navigated a new federal administration that has reduced jobs and revenue flowing into the district, faced congressional spending restrictions, and worked through an administration that repeatedly claimed the city had no money. During times like these, identifying leaders we can trust has been more important than ever. After extensive research, candidate interviews, and countless discussions, Local 36 is proud to endorse Councilmember Janice Lewis-George for mayor of the District of Columbia. Throughout our evaluation process, she demonstrated a clear understanding of our issues, a commitment to public safety, and the leadership qualities necessary to move our department forward. I'd like to extend my sincere thanks to the Local 36 Endorsement Committee, led by Brother Ryan Welsh, for their outstanding work throughout this process. The committee dedicated countless hours to conducting thoughtful due diligence, evaluating candidates, and ensuring our endorsement decisions were informed, thoughtful, and member-focused. Following this message, you will find a recording of our interview with Councilmember Lewis-George, where she speaks directly to the issues affecting our members and answers our questions candidly. For those interested in viewing the full interview, it is also available on our YouTube channel. Finally, I encourage all available members to join us tomorrow at 8:15 a.m. at the Wilson Building as we rally in support of a fair contract. Councilmember Lewis-George will be joining us to introduce herself and show her support for our members. I hope you will take the opportunity to attend, meet her, and stand united with your brothers and sisters. A breakfast at the Tune-In will follow the rally. As a strong advocate for labor, would you allow DC Firefighter to have a voice within the executive branch in your administration?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, that's a day zero thing. That's why I've started building coalition with labor now, and having these conversations. And it was one of the reasons why I honestly stepped up to run, because I have seen the way that voices have been diminished in decisions that are being made. And so for me, I want to make sure DC's bravest who stand on the line and put their lives on the line absolutely have a voice. I also think it's just good governance to have the workers who do the work a part of how you do your work as an administration. No one knows how to improve the safety of district residents like the workers who do that work. And firefighters every day put your lives on the line, and you know how to make this government work better. So for me, it is a commitment to working on the ground and within leadership with the workers to make this government work better for you and to make sure that you are safe and seen and have the benefits and supports that you deserve.
Do you think there was pressure placed on MPD's leadership for political reasons to play around with those statistics?
Yeah. I think that's why it's important to listen to the workers. I mean, if they are sounding the alarm, then it is alarm worth sounding. And you have to take into account that when workers stand up and say something's happening, that you as an executive have to pay attention to it. It's not something that you can ignore. My commitment as mayor is to real transparency and accountability and honesty, and making sure that we have management in place that officers trust. And I think that's going to be the real task here. We're going to need to bring in a new police chief who is going to be able to rebuild not only trust with the community, which we know have been fractured as a result of ICE and all these other things happening, but we also know that there's been trust that needs to be rebuilt inside of the police department. And we need to make sure that there is no manager is pressuring their workers to change statistics or saying facts. The bigger thing we can do is actually be working towards being proud of the things that we are doing in closing cases. And so for me, when I look at public safety, obviously the safety of every DC resident is a non-negotiable for me, including the workers who work in this city. Your safety is important as well. I think we need to look at first responder wellness, right? Across the country, we're seeing people explore these options. I think in Louisville, Kentucky, they have Summit Wellness Center. That's something my team, talked to me about and we've been looking at. And that's just a place because you all experience vicarious trauma as a result of the work you do.
Yeah.
And you have to address it, right? And so putting in place some also additional wellness and mental health supports for our first responders is something that we have to explore as a city. That's the only thing that will make it, as we deal with having to do recruitment and retainment, it's the only thing, like, outside of people throwing money at people also have to just want to be there. And so, creating an environment where all of our workers feel supported, heard, and have the spaces they need is of critical importance to me, and one of the reasons I stepped up to run.
Our last firehouse that was built new was in 1987. Since then, the density of each square mile of the city's grown by 1,000 people. We've seen a roughly 20% increase in population. As part of the RFK deal, which we at least got the city to commit to building a new firehouse, and the mayor's put that in her capital budget.
That's right.
As funded. As mayor, will you ensure that that project remains funded as you continue? Yes,
absolutely. I mean, across the board, not just RFK, we have to look at the entire city. As we continue to grow as a city, we also have to make sure that we have the infrastructure in place, including, fire stations in place to be able to serve the greater population.
I think in your time, you grew up here in DC, so you've seen in your lifetime 4 hospitals close. I think 2 of my siblings were born at Columbia Hospital for Women. That's closed.
That's
DC
right.
General closed in the early 2000s as well.
Providence.
Then we saw Providence up the street, and then United Medical Center, and we've opened one, Cedar Hill, but it's kind of had a little bit, and I think larger scale than that is we've seen a large net loss in just hospital beds across. So what that's meant for our ambulances is when we have a lot of people who get transported to the hospital because of lack of access to primary care, the ambulances are stuck there for a long time, not able to take other calls for service because these patients are getting boarded in the emergency room. I know you're pretty familiar with this from the council perspective, but as mayor, what authority do you feel you have or plans do you have to increase access to both emergency and urgent care in the district, and how are you planning to go about that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I actually just met with the hospital associations like last week and was having a conversation with them. I think one of the things we're going to have to do is expand the amount of urgent care centers we have across the city. And because what we know and what we see, especially even at Cedar Hill, is people are coming to emergency rooms with non-life-threatening emergencies. It costs more when that happens. It doesn't help with real emergency functions and with hospitals across the board. And so we want to work with our health providers to expand urgent care centers, especially east of the river in Ward 7 and 8, and even in 5, where we have seen the lack of urgent care centers really cause undue pressure on our emergency rooms across the board. So that's something that's going to be of critical importance for my mayoral administration to address some of the health gaps we see. And then, of course, we've seen hits to Medicaid. We've seen hits to our Alliance Healthcare program. And that's why it's important that these programs are funded, because often what happens for example, Healthcare Alliance, if people don't have in fear of if they go to get help, that they'll have to pay more, and they'll oftentimes wait, right, until their health conditions have now compounded, and it's now a major life health crisis because you waited because you were in fear of being able to not pay for your medical bill. So it's a 2-part, right? We're going to make it easier, more accessible, and more affordable for healthcare across the board, so people feel comfortable going to urgent care centers and to general practitioners, and then also expanding the amount of urgent care centers so people have places to go to not put that burden on our emergency centers.
We do have people who, like our members, just know on a first-name basis because they're in the same spot every day and they call 911, and we've been really trying to explore alternative solutions to be able to just say, hey, listen, I know that you called the ambulance, but you don't need us. And dispatching a crisis responder or
That's
something
right.
like that instead. Are there programs like that you're in favor of to sort of just because that's one of those things that affects morale for us. It's
Oh,
just you
absolutely.
get totally burned out because it's the same person and
That's
it's the
right.
same problem and nothing's getting
Yeah.
fixed. Yeah.
And I'll say this: it's not something new that I have to come up with, right? We already have the infrastructure in place. Our DBH crisis response teams through the Department of Human Services, Department of Health, we have people in place. They have just not been empowered to do that work. And so, as mayor, I'm going to empower the people who actually want to do the work, are trained to do the work, to do that work, and take the load off of our fire and EMS and off our MPD officers who are responding to mental health crisis or oftentimes people who just want that needed extra support. I want to empower them to do that work so that you all can get back to doing the critical work that you need to do, which is, saving people's lives and dealing with real emergency situations.
Great. In 2016, maybe we brought American Medical Response in to sort of handle those more minor emergencies, and it was meant to just be this temporary thing. But now you talk to people in the executive branch now, and they say it's one of these pivotal contracts that they just can't do without, and it would completely paralyze the city if we got rid of it. So I think what we're looking for out of our next mayor is someone who will actually keep the pressure on their own agencies to come up with a transition plan, because we're roughly paying this global for-profit corporation the same amount of money that we would be paying just to hire our own people,
Yeah.
to address that. And I know that's something that you've committed to already. A more specific, nuanced issue to that we would need help with, and it would require kind of between OEC and us, is that right now, depending on AMR, they don't. Their contract's like a little gray. Like they just have to put a certain number of units on the street every day. But right now, for instance, we could be out of AMR units. And so what'll happen when we're out of AMR units and it's a more minor emergency is they'll just turn around and dispatch one of our units instead of just holding the run until an AMR unit is available. And these are people who, based on their intake, aren't required to seek care for 24 to 48 hours or longer.
Oh, wow.
So is that something you'd be willing to collaborate with us on, just sort of in the here and now as we work on the long-term solutions for sort of steering away from AMR?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think fundamentally, our government can operate better. We could spend less money wasting dollars. We can put our money, invest our dollars in the right places. And I think it's just an example of how our government can function better and work more effectively. And do better for district residents as an outcome. And I think, that is what this moment really is about. If I'm honest with you, it's like, do we want to keep government functioning the same way, or do we believe fundamentally that our government can function better, can spend our taxpayer dollars better, can listen to its workers and increase performance just by listening and taking the real advice from our workers who are on the ground on how things could work better. And I think that's the real decision here. It's really the reason I stepped up to run is because of a frustration of saying, we have the answers. We have the people. Right?
Yeah.
We're not short in a district in this government of people who know the answers to the questions. We just needed an executive who is ready to listen and actually execute on the real plans that our workers have already laid out of how they could work and be more effective at their jobs, and how they could feel more supported, and how morale could be boosted just by changing simple things. And so you have my commitment there, but my commitment overall on listening to you to make our government work better. And I think that's what this race is fundamentally about. Who is actually going to listen to make our government work better, and who is going to continue doing the same old things, hoping that we're going to get a different result.
Fire apparatus. So when
Yes.
Mayor Bowser took office, we had ambulances catching on fire.
Yep.
It was a disaster. She's done a really great job of funding apparatus replacement, but just over the course of the last 3 or 4 months, we've had multiple ladder trucks have catch on fire. But we'll talk to management, and they'll tell us their thermal events. And it's really fallen into a state of disrepair, and we get really frustrated because the agency heads will go in front of the council and paint this really rosy picture. And they're always very quick to jump on us for not doing our jobs, but it really seems like there's not a lot of accountability there. And I understand the council's role in that, but we also really, I'm just kind of curious, because I realize this is, this is obviously like a political decision for a mayor, right? And you don't want to disparage your agency heads. But, you know, how would you sort of correct an issue if your fire chief went in there when we're riding around in trucks that are being barely held together and really old? What your first actions would be to correct our systemic issues within our department's fleet maintenance division and program, and management program?
So when it comes to fire and EMS, you know, the procurement issues are not just a bureaucratic issue, right? These are life and safety issues. And you have to see those things as such, right? If you don't have the equipment you need, or the equipment is not safe, or the equipment is faulty, if the vehicles are not safe or are faulty, everything you all, you know, have to do is a real life and safety issue. So we can't treat the procurement, especially within our fire and EMS, as a bureaucratic issue. It's a life and safety issue. For me, it is about going on the ground and hearing directly from the workers and seeing myself what issues that you all have identified and how we can improve it, and listening to you all about what is the better way forward and how we connect on that. And I'd be really curious to hear from you all, you know, what are those day one things we could do to improve, you know, apparatus equipment across the board that would make, you know, from day one, make your lives safer, but also make your members feel confident in an executive who has their back.
One thing that we've really been pushing, that we've been hitting brick walls on, that's frustrating, is it's essentially recycling fire trucks. Our current fire trucks are made out of stainless steel, very durable. There's places where you can send them to basically strip them down to their bones and completely rehab them, and you can recapitalize them. So they're still a capital asset, and a lot of people are doing that given the fact that it's 2 to 3 years from time of order to get a new fire truck. So I think that is one of the solutions that we proposed, as well as, I think you hit on it, just reevaluating our procurement process, because it seems to have all these rules that were placed in the name of preventing anything, nepotism or things like that, from happening. But it still seems like, regardless of how unwieldy that process is, there's still just a pathway for things like that to happen. So I think that's another thing where we'd really want to collaborate with you on, because it's always a moving target, and we've discovered that it's not always on OCP. That seems to be kind of where management likes to put the blame sometimes.
That's right. I think it is a management issue, and I think, you know, there has to be accountability with management across the board. And, you know, obviously your agency heads are who you appoint, but that's why you have to make sure that when you are selecting agency heads, you bring workers in on that interview process as well. I think it builds a lot of goodwill when you allow workers to have a seat at the table and say, hey, we're selecting a new chief, we're selecting a new agency director. Here are some of the candidates. We'd love for you all to have a conversation with them so they can hear directly from you. And we'd love to get your feedback on who responded to your questions in a way. Whose leadership do you trust? Because at the end of the day, the relationship between a chief and his workers and his managers and his workers is built on trust and respect, mutual trust and mutual respect. And so that means you have to hire people who obviously have the experience, the expertise, also have the management skills to harness and build those relationships. And that is important. And that's going to be important for me as an executive to build those relationships and make sure I have management in place and leaders in place who know how to build those relationships and do so from a place of respect, a mutual respect and trust.
Are you in favor of a structured OUC where the OUC director actually has to answer to the agency heads that the agency serves? Because we find it's just bureaucratic BS.
Yeah, I think we had legislation of that nature that I've co-signed and supported. I mean, OUC is one of the issues. I mean, this has been persistent for me as a council member for the last 5 years. We've had so many issues regarding OUC and calls that have cost people's lives, that have cost our city. I think it's just one of the biggest embarrassments, if I'm honest with you, that a city of this size and with this level of a budget and this level of talent within our city, we still have not figured out how to get our OUC to function above the national average, which we're not there. And so this is, again, I know people are trying to be saying this, but like I literally ran because I felt like we are used to dysfunction in this government, and we can have a non-dysfunctional government across the board. Just we really can. And the gaslighting that has occurred and occurs because management just won't even acknowledge there is an issue and we have an issue here. I think there's several things we need to do in OUC. I think one of the systemic ways we can fix that is having OUC answer to the client agencies it serves. I think another answer is dealing with the personnel issues. Obviously, we're going to have to hire quality people to OUC who have a real basic level of knowledge in DC, a basic knowledge of the work, and have the training, the strenuous training and effective training that needs to go alongside it. I think we can do a lot more with improved technology. And using an improved technology to help the system function better and do more across the board. And I think it is both a management issue and a QA quality assurance issue that we can put in place to ensure more quality assurance.
So up the street near Providence Hospital is our current police and fire clinic, which has been the contractor for probably over 25 years.
Yeah.
And, in the scenario of the plane crash, just because this is the culture that's promoted for so many years, as you know, with PTSD, right? Like you can be okay right now, but 15 years from now, you might get triggered, right?
Yeah.
And what we want to avoid is that member going to get care 15 years from now and saying, hey, look, I ran this plane crash 15 years ago. And then them saying, well, a lot has happened in 15 years. So this might not just be the plane crash.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to deny your claim, or we're not going to provide the support. So I think that's some of what we're looking for. And one thing we've been working with Councilmember Pinto on is working to reopen that occupational health care contract, which it did get reopened.
Yes.
It's closing again in 2 weeks. But more gaslighting, right? Like the current contractor was saying, oh, there's nobody else in this space, right? But a phrase we like to use is culturally competent, right? There's companies
That's right.
across the country now who specialize in first responder health and wellness.
That's right.
So we've gotten to a place where it's more competitive, but I think a commitment we're looking at from a Louis George administration is that when the RFP for something like that comes up, or similar things, that Local 36 is actually part of the RFP review and selection panel and actually has a vote, because we're the ones who are getting the care, not sort of the city managers who are choosing this program and contract.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what I've been talking about from the beginning. It's just like when it comes to choosing management, when it comes to choosing contractors, when it comes to choosing equipment and the right procurement, listening and have workers having a voice in those rooms are the best way to get to the best result for our city. And so that is my commitment in all of the facets of, if it's something that impacts your workers, then workers should be at the table.
One of the things that we've noticed, it's become a problem also for suitability, trying to get people on the job, but access to medical cannabis and marijuana, right? So for our members who want to use it for sleep regulation off duty, or PTSD,
That's
or joint pain, whatever. In your mind, just given your background, do you think that's something that needs to be legislated by the council, or do you think it's as simple as just issuing a mayor's order about safety-sensitive employees? And it's also okay if you'd have to research it and get back to us. But,
well, we just had, actually at the council working session, we just had this conversation yesterday. Now, this was in response to traffic guards.
Yeah, it's been hard for crossing guards.
Crossing guards.
I know, Councilmember Parker's working on
That's
something.
right. And so it's opened up a conversation of how we have to revisit the safety positions and what qualifications and the things that have been put in place. I think we overall have to revisit it. But again, you all are in a different space. That PTSD, we don't want people to have a reliance on opioids, right? We know the real harm that comes from that and the addiction that can come from that. And so for me, I think this is not only it's not only sort of a reasonable ask, but it's also a smart way to avoid what could be some other detrimental impacts if we don't allow for these things to occur.
Like DUIs.
DUIs,
things like that.
exactly. That's what I mean. So I think it's important for us to, help our workers who are dealing with chronic pain, because there's chronic physical pain. There's also sleep deprivation issues that come as a result of the nature of the work you do. That we should be addressing and allowing that a leeway.
we're all trained to the minimum level of EMT, and as EMTs, we're trained to recognize impairment, and that's really what we're trying to come up with a policy that's not about ingestion, but about recognizing impairment.
That's right.
And there's some space there.
I agree.
I want something that's been a hot topic the last 7 days.
7 days, oh boy.
I'll bring you this here. So we've been talking about the toll the job takes on our bodies, and so a 25-year career for a firefighter in the district, not to disparage other people's careers, but that might equal a 50-year career in a civilian life. So we're always really looking forward to retirement security. So I want to give you a chance to sort of clarify some comments that I think of yours that were taken out of context.
Agree.
But do you support using the police and firefighters pension fund to finance district housing initiatives? And if so, how would you structure the financing?
Right. I want to look at the camera when I say this. This is the one time, right? I want to be very clear here that I strongly support ensuring our public employee pensions are well funded and managed prudently. Period. And our pension funds are currently very strong financial situation, and no one should mess with the workers' security. That is absolutely not my intention or plan, and would never make any risky investments using our workers' pension funds. Absolutely not. What I was hinting at is what happened at Buzzer Point, which created an opportunity where the Buzzer Point development was actually the stacks was built utilizing capital from funds from IBEW, electrical workers, and they were able to utilize those funds to be able to make a real smart investment decision around that project. And so it was just an example of opportunities to leverage funds for smart investments. But in no way was I sort of signaling that we wanted to make risky investments with people's pension funds. So again, I strongly support ensuring our public employees' pensions are well funded and meaningfully managed and prudently done, and would never jeopardize that very real security that people have worked their lives and worked hard for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think part of the reason that statute is in existence, right, about DC not investing locally, they invest in Philadelphia, other places, whatever, and then, as you know, they have a whole structure and rules for these investments.
That's right.
But I think, it just causes people anxiety, because then we don't want those investments to become political or any ways like that.
That's
so we appreciate your commitment to keeping an open dialogue on that and being prudent with that and clarifying your comments. I think that's really helpful. Related to bargaining. So we're right now, as you know, we're trying to get our CBA, make sure that there's funding in workforce investment or elsewhere to fund our CBA. Right now, we're on a path towards arbitration over our current, it's not our current contract because we're not in contract, but FY 25, 26, and 27 is the 3-year term that we're bargaining over. So if we continue on this arbitration path, the arbitrator will likely rule in October, and then FY 27 will start, and then we'll only have a year left on our contract. So this is another conversation we've had, but when these agreements aren't negotiated on time, they end up costing the city more money.
That's right.
And then it sets our workers back financially. So will you commit, because actually in 2 weeks, because of the CMPA, we have to file our intent to bargain for the next 3 years.
That's right.
And I know you've made this commitment to us, but just out here for everyone, are you committed to making sure our next deal is negotiated on time?
Yeah, it's the law. I think to be clear, but sorry to bring the legal part in here.
Yeah.
It is actually the law to bargain in good faith. I think we have seen a management who has not been bargaining in good faith. Not with IAF. They were
actually found by an independent hearing examiner to not be bargaining in good faith.
I'm sure it's the truth. That's right. So yes, I will follow the law and uphold the law and bargain in good faith and ensure that we bargain on time, and we do so in real faith, so that it doesn't have to get to arbitration. It doesn't have to get to this. I want to make sure. Even yesterday, we brought up firefighters in the workforce investment fund and utilizing that to make sure our firefighters get the COLA increases and the benefits they deserve. And so you have my commitment now currently as council member and as mayor to ensure that we are bargaining in good faith and that firefighters get their due that they have always been due, and for the work that they have done outstanding and has made our fire department one of the best in the nation.
As you know, DC is unique in having to meet their financial obligations.
That's right.
And how do you, I don't know, I guess so. How do you see reconciling a period of slow revenue to meet those?
Yeah. I think I want to make certain things clear. First of all, DC does have a healthy budget and a healthy financial situation. It's not me just saying that. The mayor has said this several times. And we want to keep our financial standing the way as good as it is. We don't want to lose our triple bond rating that we have. And so we have to be smart with our investments and smart with our dollars. We do have a very conservative CFO. So with a very conservative CFO, and that's his job. So our CFO is conservative. You know that as an executive, which means you have to leverage what you have. In my opinion, yes, we know that the federal job loss has hit us. There's no ignoring that. We've seen it. We felt it personally. Many of our neighbors and workers who we know, family members, me personally, have lost jobs to DOGE. I believe that the district, though, has more to offer than just our federal landscape being our economy drivers. And what I have talked about is leveraging the other factors we have as a city to grow our economy. So simultaneously fighting for my affordability agenda and building more homes and making DC more affordable and leveraging our strengths as a city, I believe that we have the opportunity and, more importantly, spending our dollars better, right? We can't get caught up on bad deals, right? $200 million sports betting deal that my opponent was ready to do, the day one RFK deal that my opponent was able to approve. Like, these are notions, right? The Business and Economic Development Committee, every agency under that committee has under scrutiny because of wasted contract dollars. $13 million wasted on a contractor who, had contracts. So making better deals is another way we're going to save money. And doing the work we need to leverage our strengths is how we build our economy. And then again, we have the opportunity to leverage more federal dollars across the board, right? As you know, last year we gave $34 million back to HUD. We've left $58 million of $60 million that was afforded to us in the Inflation Reduction Act through the Biden administration on the table, right? So we leave federal dollars on the table too. Again, the overarching theme is that good governance and the lack of pay-to-play politics, which has cost our city a lot of money. With that eliminated, we as a city have not only a strong economy we get to build on, but a government that is well-funded that can support making sure our workers have the pay and benefits they deserve.
Got it. What's sort of your response that I feel like I've heard some people on the council say, and a little bit of this out of the executive, that DC's budgets become too weighted towards programmatic spending at the expense of core city services? Do you agree with that? Do you think it's more just a matter of smart budgeting? Or I'll give you an example, like continuing programs after COVID relief dollars expired. Now we're having trouble meeting some of those obligations. And I was just kind of curious if you thought that was an accurate characterization or just how you felt about that. Like, I'm thinking like, I don't know, getting everybody a rain garden at the expense of buying a new fire truck or something. I don't know.
Yeah, no. I think it's a definitely a new nuanced conversation. I think, I've been saying this consistently. I'm running to put people first, and people always like, what does that mean? And for me, that actually means, budgeting in a way that everybody, no matter what ward you live in, get basic government services working. I do think we have failed at the basics. And I do think that we as a city have to look at how we can govern better. But I think a lot of this is a management issue and a pay-to-play politics issue. Again, those are all of these things stem from a management unwilling to listen to people, to put people in management positions who are expertise in the field, skilled in the field, ready to listen to workers. And so I think it's a culture, right? This election is about a culture shift at the end of the day. And I think that's what I want workers to understand, right? We know the culture that has existed and persisted. I believe that we could have a better functioning government and management system, and basic government services can work better. And I don't think that has to come at the expense of making it fall on the backs of working people, right? And I don't think it has to come at the expense of not ensuring our social safety net is secure, because that also would lead to failure in social safety nets, also lead to more public safety issues and more problems for our city. Right? We have workers who really want to do great work, right? Like you were just talking about with crisis. There are people who work in DBH who have been waiting to be empowered to actually respond to mental health crisis.
Yeah.
And it's been from the top that said, no, you're not going to do that.
Yeah.
We're not going to do that.
We've been waiting to see them.
That's right. And you all have been waiting to see them, right?
Yeah.
There's people in, every agency, right, who's been like, hey, we want to do the work. We just haven't been empowered to do that work.
Are there any things you want to share that would be specific metrics or standards you would use to determine which programs or expenditures might need to be cut, consolidated, or eliminated?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we are going to do a forensic analysis of every agency within district government. And we're going to look at each agency and say, how can we more effectively and efficiently spend? How can we work more effectively across the board? For example, health is one of our big cost drivers as a city. We're going to look and see whether we should do like Maryland has done and switch to a value-based system that could save us 5 to 6 to even up to 10% of spending just by switching to those systems. And so that forensic analysis of each agency is going to really allow us to see where we are misspending, that review of current contractors and the money they're spending. And I want to be clear, this is the work that I've done as facilities chair. No one thought facilities chair was the coolest committee on the council until now, where people are saying, oh, she had the opportunity to actually go on the ground and see how the system was broken and actually fix it. And guess what I realized? A lot of these fixes and issues don't stem from needing more money, right? Because I think people it doesn't stem from needing more money, actually. Yeah. It just stems from listening to people and putting the quality assurance and quality controls in place within an agency, producing the systems that work. And I think that is really what I want to drive home, is that that's the work that I'm going to be doing with every agency. That work doesn't start when I'm sworn in January. That work is starting now, ground zero, right? That's why I've built such a broad coalition, because I'm already listening to people.
Chief Donnelly's going to have 34 years of service this month. He's able to retire. What's your plan for selection of a new fire chief?
I think we need to have both a national and local search. I think that's a fair thing to do, is to, come up with a real guidelines for who do we want, right? And that stems with talking to workers. What do we need in a new fire chief? What do you all need in a new fire chief? What would inspire you to continue to work in the district? Because again, I'm trying to keep workers here. I've been saying this also throughout the campaign, is that if you are a DC worker, and that includes fire and EMS, and you have been frustrated with our system, you feel hopeless and you feel apathetic, we want you to stay. I want you to stay in DC. I want you to continue to work in DC. So for me, it looks like asking our workers, what is it that we need to see in a new police, in a new fire chief and a police chief, both? What do we need to see in our chief? What requirements, what basic, skills do you want them to embody? What on the work skills? I think I am a critical believer in that. If you've done the work at the lower level, you can really be able to do the work on a higher level, and you have that basic level of respect for the workers who are still doing that work. And so I want to see someone who has the real training, the real skills, who's done various jobs within the fire department, who understand the experience of all of our workers and want to improve those skills and make our city work better. So to me, it's a partnership with our firefighters union and workers to figuring out what the qualifications should be, what are we looking for, and then inviting you all to be able to be a part of reviewing, the applicants that come in, and really being able to say, here are some applicants that we feel are strong applicants to getting us there.
Well, thank you, Councilmember, for joining us today.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. That's a wrap.
Awesome.